After the Great Deluge, when the waters receded and all that remained were the broken spines of shattered civilizations, Sumer was no longer the land of knowledge. The stone tablets had cracked. The temples collapsed as if the gods themselves wished to erase the memory of their own existence. Upon the highest throne of the old world, Enlil ascended, not with holiness, but with a smoldering wrath left over from the time when the first humans began asking about their origins. Enlil issued a decree: all things related to the ME, those vibrational tools that held the primordial knowledge, must be sealed away. The symbols of sacred frequency were suffocated. Every memory of wisdom encoded in resonance was declared heresy. And the one who held that frequency was Enki. No one knows exactly what happened after that final gathering of the Anunnaki Council. But one thing is certain: Enki, the god of water, of life, of secrets hidden in earth and blood, vanished from Eridu. He was not slain. He was not shackled. He was not cursed by word. Enki was simply exiled from collective memory. No one spoke of him. No one recorded him. But the most terrifying thing wasn't the silence. It was the fact that he accepted it. Enki did not rebel. He summoned no tsunami. He cast no curse into the sky. He simply walked away from Eridu unarmed, unattended, carrying only one thing: a fragment of a ME that had not yet been erased, hidden deep within the frequency of his very soul. A sliver of the universe's memory. And while the other gods fixed their gaze to the north, where old cities were rising again under new control, Enki turned south, across crimson stone ridges, across burning desert, across places where the sun strips the flesh of wanderers. He sought no kingdom. He sought no throne. He sought a land untouched by the seals of old power, a clean field upon which to sow the frequency that had been exiled from Sumer. And he found it. Kemet. No one awaited him there. No sanctuaries stood in preparation. No followers chanted his name. But there was an ancient layer of earth not yet inscribed, a river that breathed its own rhythm, and a people not yet shaped by the definitions of old divinity. There Enki did not appear under his old name. He no longer used water to mold humans. This time he used frequency to shape the soul of a new civilization. And to do that he carried a new name, a new symbol, a new frequency for the old memory Thoth. You are beginning to resonate again with the frequency Enki sowed millennia ago. Subscribe to the channel not because of logic, but because your soul just heard something beyond reason. Leave a comment with the number 8, not to prove that you understand, but to affirm deep within your soul that you once knew, and now you are beginning to remember. There was no halo, no entourage, no proclamation, no fanfare welcoming him as other gods once received when crossing the desert to conquer. Only a lone figure cloak dusted in red earth, with eyes not fixed on where he was going, but listening as if something was echoing from beneath his feet. The sun did not burn him. It melted him into a liquid memory capable of seeping into stone, mixing with sand, and dissolving into the frequency of a land that had never known his name. That land was Kemet. Contrary to the radiant myths later tied to Egypt, the land Enki stepped upon bore no white temples, no golden statues, only sandstone and winds carrying voices yet to take form. But he recognized it immediately. This land was waiting for a first language, not to name things, but to call back memory long buried in human blood. Enki brought no scepter. What he carried was water, not merely liquid, but living memory from the Abzu layers upon layers of vibrations never forgotten. Water was the breath of the soul, the way he sensed the veins of this land humming something both alien and familiar, like a call from another planet. He knelt touching the sand, not to test for life, but to speak with a memory no human had ever touched. And the desert answered, not with words, but with a tiny tremor lighter than a whisper, yet thunderous in the soul of a god who once shaped life from earth and frequency. Enki closed his eyes. In that moment he saw Eridu again, not as a city, but as a wound unhealed. The ME had been locked deep within the vaults of Sumer, but he still carried the original code, a wave that had not been silenced. And here, Kemet was unencoded, a white field, a zone of resonance without a dominant frequency. And he knew he had not come to rule. He had come to sow, not seeds but symbols. Not to teach mankind how to speak, but how to feel the vibration within speech. Not to create a new species, but to awaken the deepest strata of the current one, the part the other gods had tried to lock away through laws, religions, and rigid definitions. Enki walked the desert, but each step he took didn't just leave a mark, it left a pulse. And those pulses would one day become the direction of the winds that built the pyramids, the angles of refracted light in the king's chamber, the way hieroglyphs merged with spirals, the ancient symbol of the ME. No one saw him arrive, no records documented the moment. But from the day he entered that land, the knights in Kemet began to dream. The dreams of the native people began to glow with silver light. They began to see a figure with blue eyes and hands that always touched the earth. Children born after that carried eyes that seemed to remember another place, a land of 2 rivers where a tree did not grow, but vibrated. Not long after the first symbol appeared, a simple curve etched in stone. But if you listened deeply, you could hear the echo of water in it. An old stone carver said he didn't invent it, he only followed a call in the palm of his hand. And when he finished carving, he wept. He didn't know why. Enki wasn't there to witness. He had already moved on deeper into the legendary Black Land. Because he knew memory does not need to be seen to be revived. It only needs to be sown in the right place. At that time, Egypt had no script, no chronicles, no engraved names to immortalize souls. Only the Nile flowed quietly like a vein unnamed winding through primal land still untouched by the frequencies of the gods. Nomadic tribes scattered tents along the riverbanks, living by the cycles of water, sky, and silence. But they had no language yet to connect dream and memory. That void was what drew Enki. He didn't seek places where temples already stood. He sought land unmarked by divine dominion, a place ready to be touched by the original frequency, unmutated by the ambitions of the gods to define everything. He did not enter as a conqueror. No thunder, no fire, no declaration. Enki, the one who once shaped man from clay and the breath of Abzu, now moved as silently as water soaking into rock. He observed the unspoken movements, a child placing their ear to the ground to listen, the elderly watching the moon without naming it. Each night the wind carried sounds like the resonance of something never spoken. And then he began, not with words but with rhythm. A soft tap on stone, steady as the heartbeat of an ancient soul yearning to awaken. At a rock crevice near the riverbank, he took a black crystal and began to draw on the wall a spiral. Not decoration, but the first glyph of remembrance. Each curve not a line but a wave, a segment of the ancient frequency he once used to inscribe the ME. No one saw him. No one heard him. But from that day, something began to change. People by the river began carving stone not to decorate, but as if guided by something emanating from the rocks. Children began repeating strange tones in their sleep sound clusters not belonging to any tribe. A blind woman said she heard the sound of light. And in the sky the moon appeared strangely full, bright, and reflecting a symbol unseen before a curved silver reed. That symbol, the reed, and the moon began appearing repeatedly. No one knew where it came from, but it embedded itself into the people's memory as if they had seen it in a past life. Those who were more awake began to sense an invisible presence, not commanding, not imposing, just gently vibrating in dreams, whispering through wind among the reeds. Enki left no signature. He never carved his name. But each tap he made on stone was a heartbeat etched into the strata of the land, into the angle of light passing through the mountains, into the echo of the moon upon the river. He sowed frequency, then withdrew. He did not need to be named, only that the memory he planted find its resonant match. And that one would continue the unfinished work of the ME, not through power, but through soul vibration. Later people would say, we did not invent writing, it appeared. But those who listened deeper would know nothing ever appears on its own. It is memory once sealed, now reopening through symbol. And Enki, the hidden god, only smiled in silence, because from that moment on, he no longer needed to appear. The symbol would speak for him. Enki knew well, if he carried his old name, his old form, the ones who were once allies would become pursuers. The name Enki had once shaken divine council's symbol of unbound wisdom, creator force, sovereign thought. And for that, it became a stain to gods obsessed with perfect order. That name was struck from Sumer's golden tablets sealed in the temple archives as if it had never existed. But he still existed, not in title, but in vibration. He did not reclaim power. He did not confront Enlil again. Instead, he vanished from the history known to man to appear in the memory they could not name, and he chose another name, Thoth. No longer god of water, he became god of knowledge and symbol. No longer forming bodies from clay. He began drawing the soul's frequency through glyphs. Thoth did not teach like a prophet. He did not stand on pedestals, did not issue commandments, did not seek followers. He did not teach with words, but with rhythm, light, and symbols etched into stone, visible only to those who carried matching vibrations. His language required no translation because it was written in the intuition of the soul. Under his hand, the first hieroglyphic system was born. Not to write, but to activate. Each glyph was a point of intersection between light and vibration. Each image did not describe but unveiled. They did not tell stories, they recalled memory. When future scholars studied the Egyptian script, they believed they were reading a language system. They tried translating glyphs forming sentences, but they did not know. These symbols cannot be read, they can only be heard from the deepest level of awareness, because they were not writing. They were the ME in their most hidden form. A covert ME re-encoded into imagery and resonance, undetectable by the council of gods, but capable of awakening those who once resonated with Eridu, with Abzu, with the first soul memory. People began carving Thoth's symbols on stone walls, on astronomical tablets, on the foreheads of sphinxes. Whenever moonlight touched these carvings, the chamber would hum softly, not loud enough to measure, but deep enough to make the hearts of those standing inside feel something stir. Thoth did not need worship. He needed no temple, no offerings. He did not come to be venerated. He came to be remembered, because true knowledge requires no guardian. It only needs to be sown in the right place at the right moment in the right soul. People did not know who Thoth was. No one saw him die. No birth date, no lineage. But every pharaoh would ask to be recognized by Thoth upon coronation, not because he granted blessings, but because he held the memory of the original frequency, a form of knowledge unspeakable, only resonant. And so, he lived on, in every symbol, in every eye that whispers, "I've known this before." In every moment, someone gazes upon an ancient Egyptian glyph and shudders without knowing why. That is Thoth. That is Enki. That is memory escaped from history to survive in the soul. Thoth did not teach them to build temples like ordinary architects. He did not draw blueprints, did not use measuring rods, did not read from sacred texts. Instead, he taught them to listen not to human speech, but to the heartbeat of stone, to the breath of the earth, to the waves silently flowing beneath the surface that the eye could not see. He showed them that every object emits a sound, but only those who know how to be still can feel it. The pyramid did not begin with the idea of death. It began with an invisible tremor in the heart of the earth, a point that Thoth identified by resonating with the frequency of a buried ME. These points were not chosen randomly, but according to a star system, most prominently Sirius, the star that sends out messages of light from realms beyond the third dimension. He taught them to place each stone in alignment with the rhythm of the stars, as though building a great instrument, not a temple. Each block, when placed correctly, would ring out a tone, and when the entire structure was complete, it became a silent symphony, written not with sound but with mass light and stillness. The pyramid was not made to shelter the dead. It was a wave column, a frequency resonating device designed to awaken the ME, to revive ancient memory sealed away after the Great Flood. Its underground chambers were not tombs, but vibrational anchors. Its corridors were not built for walking, but to channel energy, light, sound, and frequency. Each chisel stroke, though seemingly mundane, was a knock upon the earth's forgotten memory. Each touch upon limestone was a stream of resonance sent deep underground, stirring layers long unread. Thoth gave no orders. He only stood at the center, hand resting on the stone, eyes turned toward the sky. And the people of Kemet, though they never truly understood his words, knew they were engaging in something beyond labor. They were not obeying, they were remembering, as though some ancient part of them had once built such structures in another land with another god under another name. And thus the first construction in Kemet was not the product of engineering, but of collective resonance. An awakening that no one realized was happening. They were not building, they were re-manifesting a waveform that Thoth had reawakened through his gaze. He spoke rarely. But every full moon he would lead a group deep into the pyramid under construction, where the stones still breathed, where the scent of human hands had not yet dried. He would place his hand upon the wall and close his eyes. No one dared to break the silence. And yet, in that moment, the entire structure seemed to hum with a sound no one could record. It did not live in the ear but in the bones. It did not echo outward but resonated through blood. After that night, the work progressed faster. not because they were more enthusiastic, but because they were no longer doing, they were becoming part of the structure, part of the rhythm, part of the frequency that Thoth transmitted through unspoken symbols. Thoth never signed his name on stone, but people carved the eye, the reed, the moon, as if offering thanks they could not speak aloud, because they knew the one who guided them did not need to be named, only felt. And if anyone asked them what the structure was for, they could not answer. But if you stand in the king's chamber at the precise moment Sirius rises, you will understand something beyond words is awakening. It is not a pyramid. It is memory singing once more. In his silent journey through earth and stone, through moonlight and the rhythm of the riverbed, Thoth encountered a soul unlike any other. She did not declare herself divine. She carried no symbol of power. She did not stand upon stone pedestals. She was simply a woman passing through the moonlit night, carrying a small jar of water, her eyes fixed, unblinking on the moon, as if trying to remember something stolen from her thousands of lifetimes ago. Her name was Isis. But within her vibration, Thoth heard a frequency he recognized, soft as the breath of Abzu, but not quite the same. It reminded him of Ninhursag, his sister, with whom he once created Lulu, the first human who knew how to breathe with soul, how to question, how to resist. Ninhursag had written codes in clay. Thoth, now living memory, used frequency to summon lost souls back into resonance. Isis remembered nothing. She did not recall her past lives. She did not remember the symbols. She did not remember sitting beside the sacred lake with Enki engraving the ME into the bloodline of humanity. But in her eyes there was a flicker only visible to those who had once seen a soul in motion. Thoth did not call her by her old name. He did not force her to remember. Because true memory cannot be summoned with words, it only returns when the soul touches the right frequency. Thoth gave no books. He preached no doctrine. Instead, he led her into a room of silence, a chamber of stone where light reflected off slits in the ceiling. There he placed one hand over his heart, then gently upon her throat. Not to examine, but to transmit vibration. Language, he said, can be shackles or a key. It depends on how we make it resonate. He taught Isis not to pronounce, but to resonate. Not to create words, but to activate the vibrations that lie behind them. She learned to breathe in spirals. She learned to speak a single word, not to define, but to open a gate. Thoth let her hear the first sound humanity had ever uttered when etched into being by the ME, a sound belonging to no language, yet one that made the soul of every listener tremble. And when Isis echoed that tone in rhythm, the symbols on the wall began to glow, not by magic, not by divine power, but because the frequency matched. Isis was the first to truly understand wisdom does not reside in books, not in images, not in words. It lives in frequency, in the way a soul hums in harmony with the living symbols carved into stone, in how a single breath, if misaligned, can silence a pyramid, and how one word spoken in the right vibration can awaken millions of years of memory sleeping deep beneath the earth. From that moment on, Thoth gave Isis the role of keeper of soul frequency, not a goddess of magic, but a weaver of language from primordial vibration. She rewrote the ancient chants not to praise, but to call back lost souls, those who had forgotten who they were, those who would hear a sacred hymn and weep, not knowing why. Isis was no longer a student. She became a teacher of remembrance. And when she chanted a sacred hymn at the first funeral, the stone layers within the pyramid trembled softly. No one heard it, but something within every soul present tightened, as if someone had just stepped through a gate no one could see. Thoth merely nodded. He said nothing more, because from that moment on, memory no longer lived only in the ME. It had entered a living soul. From the awakening of Isis, a new current began to ripple through the depths of Kemet, a faint, complex, overlapping frequency, like an echo from a realm without words. Thoth did not search for it. He simply felt it. A soul was drifting, caught between two poles, life and dissolution. A waveform unsteady but capable of alignment if tuned to the right vibration. The name of that soul was Osiris. Unlike Isis, who carried an untouched memory, Osiris bore a misaligned vibrational structure, as if he belonged to another realm, but was bound to this world by a promise yet unfulfilled. He did not remember who he was, he did not know his role, but he did not fear death. And it was precisely this that led Thoth to understand Osiris was the gate that must be opened for humanity to relearn how to pass through death, not with pain, but with memory. Thoth did not teach him how to live. He taught Osiris how to die, without disappearing. He led him into the center of the pyramid, a place without light where the stones breathed like the heart of one in deep sleep. There, Thoth unveiled hidden frequency gates laid out long before humans knew how to name the stars. These gates were not made of matter but of intersections between the vibration of stone and the light of the stars. Space is not straight, Thoth said. It folds when frequency touches the right point. In that state, Osiris was taught to journey through the invisible realms, not with the body, but with purified memory. His soul was stripped of layers of ego, of blocks of fear, of distorted genetic codes. Each night he died in meditation, and each morning he returned with a part of his being transformed. From these experiences, Thoth rewrote the map for the soul, not in ink, but in living symbols. The Book of the Dead, not to tell stories of death, but to chart the way back to the ME when the body is no more. Each chapter did not carry meaning, it carried frequency. Each symbol was not an image, but a gate code. Osiris became the first to cross through the intermediate realm, not falling into oblivion, nor pulled back by flesh. He walked through the hall of Maat, where the feather did not weigh truth but measured resonance. And when his heart was lighter than the foundational frequency of the earth, the gate opened not to heaven, but to the original essence of the soul. From that moment on, death in Kemet was no longer an ending. It became a threshold, and Osiris, the living symbol of that journey, was carved into every temple, not to be worshipped, but to remind no one truly dies if they still remember the way home. Thoth did not inscribe his name into the book, but he encoded himself into the symbols so that every soul who read them would encounter him not through eyes, but through resonance. And thus death was no longer a pit. It was a mirror reflecting the truest frequency of the soul. If misaligned, the soul dissolved into the current of forgetting. If in tune, the soul remembered who it truly was. That was Thoth's final gift to Osiris, and through him to all of humanity. A map, not of paper, not of stone, but of light symbol and memory. Under Thoth's guidance, the ancient architects were not mere builders, they became harmonic composers for the earth. Every touch upon stone, every slant of angle, every gap left between surfaces was not calculated through mundane mathematics, but aligned with the resonant ratios of the stars. They were not constructing tombs, they were crafting stone symphonies where each layer sang not in sound, but in pressure waves echoing through the very fabric of space. The pyramid was never meant to bury anyone. It did not contain corpses, it contained potential. The potential to transmit a message not in language but in frequency, to penetrate the atmosphere, bypass the physical dimension, and reach the foundational structure of the cosmos. The empty chamber at the heart of the structure was not a flaw in engineering, but an intentional design. A resonant vacuum, a space where standing waves could form, amplify, and become a bridge between earth and star. Only those who stood in that place at the right moment with the right breath would hear a sound that no one else could, the vibration echoing from the ME. None of them knew the name Enki. Yet they moved in his rhythm as if an ancient wave was guiding their hands without their knowing. They did not learn from books. They recalled memory from stone. The multi-ton blocks were never forced to move. They agreed to vibrate once the frequency was aligned. Thoth never stayed long at any one structure. He appeared only at the beginning, at the moment the first strike touched the stone base. He spoke no words. He simply stood still, hand pressed to his forehead, eyes half closed, as if listening to a music that had not yet been written but already existed. Beneath some pyramids in places no ordinary person could reach, Thoth hid fragments of the ME, not to keep them for himself, not to seal them away forever, but to wait. Wait until humankind could resonate, wait until someone stepped into the right room, breathed the right breath, and in one singular moment, matched frequency with the sleeping me. Then memory would awaken. Not through words, not through prophecy, but through total remembrance, a kind of knowing no one ever taught, a sensation of having lived, having built, having stood in waves of light without knowing how or why. That would be the moment the ME activates. And if humankind is ready, they will hear the call from before history ever began. People often ask, why do the pyramids bear no inscriptions? Why no king's name? Why no ritual records? Because they were not meant to record what had passed. They were built to await what will return. A construction not of that age, not in service of divine authority, not honoring the dead, but a device sending frequency backward into the foundations of reality. Thoth understood this. True knowledge cannot be destroyed, only hidden, and the safest hiding place was not a vault nor a deep forest, but within resonance, a place no one can unlock without the correct frequency. That is why he withdrew, not dying, not vanishing, simply dissolving into the vibrational field of the structures he left behind, so that one day when Earth pulses at the right rhythm and humanity becomes still enough to listen, he will return, not in form, but in resonance. Across generations, no one spoke the name Enki anymore. The scribes had struck him from the Sumerian pantheon. The temples no longer bore the symbols of water and wisdom. But even when a name is erased, vibration never dies. And in Kemet, no one uttered the word Enki because he had changed form. He had dissolved into memory. Thoth, his new name, needed no introduction. He was present in a way that only those who were seeking could truly sense. He did not age. He did not vanish. He left behind no tomb or ashes. Thoth existed as a thin layer of breath between ancient stone and light. At times, he was the scribe of raw reed pen in hand, holding a scroll that never ran out. At times, he was the silver light that brushed across the pharaoh's brow at the moment of coronation, a whisper from the spirit realm that said, "This one has been touched by ancient wisdom." And sometimes, he was nothing at all, just a dream. A dream in which you are standing inside a pyramid, moonlight pouring down, and you hear the stones vibrate though they make no sound. Your heart skips a beat. You do not see him, but you know something is there, watching, calling you home. Many believe Thoth is immortal, but the truth goes deeper. He did not defeat death. He transcended form. Thoth became a waveform, a mode of being unbound by space or time. Not a god, not a ghost, not an illusion, but a foundational vibration, a cosmic undertone that resounds every time a soul begins to awaken. And that waveform still lingers in the cracks between ancient stones, in the pulse of long, silent monuments, and most of all within the memory of those who seek truths no one teaches. People have asked, why is it that someone who has never studied ancient Egyptian can tremble at the touch of a hieroglyph as if hearing a voice from a former life? Or why does a child untaught in divine symbols draw the eye of the divine in the sand? When no one is watching, it is because Thoth, that waveform, still broadcasts. Not on a frequency the ears can hear, but on the frequency of the soul. He does not need to be named. Because if you have heard him, if you have remembered, if you have been touched by a symbol, you cannot explain. Then you have already heard him. That is why there are dreams that leave you waking in tears without reason, without clear imagery. Only a feeling as if something ancient was just whispered back to you, something no one in this life ever told you. Thoth is there, not to teach you something new, but to call back what you already knew. And if you are still enough to hear, if you are brave enough to pass through the noise of dogma, ritual, and reason, you will hear that waveform rising through your spine. And in that moment, you will need no proof, no explanation, because wisdom does not need to be understood, it only needs to be resonated with. And in that moment, you will no longer be a student. You will be memory remembering itself. Thoth chose a place between the barren desert and the silent flowing river, a place where the light of two worlds intersects, where the sky imposes nothing and the earth demands nothing. It was the point of intersection between stillness and motion, between form and formlessness, the only place in Kemet capable of holding the vibration of the ME without it being distorted by belief or power. There he laid the foundation for Hermopolis, not a city, but a resonance center. It was designed as a spiritual device where every doorway, every angle, every stone step followed the orbital cycle of the star of Thoth, Mercury, the planet of intellect, the fastest frequency in the system. Unlike Eridu, where the ME was once openly worshipped through rites and temples, Hermopolis concealed itself. It was not built to attract people. It was built to filter them. Only those who entered with the right stillness, with the wordless question vibrating on the right layer, whose internal frequency matched the outer geometry of stone, could hear what this place was singing. In Hermopolis, there were no books, no classrooms, no dogma. Seekers came, but they were not taught. They were placed within currents of resonance. They walked upon stone floors, each tile holding a distinct frequency field. Step wrong, you'd hear a dissonant screech. Step right, the floor would hum as if whispering something beyond language. The structure of Hermopolis resembled a labyrinth, but not to lose one's way. It was designed to recalibrate the rhythm of whoever stepped inside. Every turn, a test. Every pause, a question. And if you were patient enough, still enough, in tune enough, if your heartbeat aligned with the rhythm of stone, Thoth would appear, not in form, not in radiant light, but as a deep sensation within a sudden stillness, as if someone had placed a hand over your heart and all noise within your mind disappeared. In that moment, you no longer needed to ask, no longer needed to understand. Because true wisdom does not need to be spoken, it only needs to be remembered. Hermopolis was never meant for crowds. Only souls who had once resonated with the ME could find the way. And when they left, they carried no knowledge. They carried a corrected phase shift. Their eyes changed, their voices carried a new timbre, and they began to transmit frequency not through words but through presence. Thoth did not reside in Hermopolis. He was the living vibration within every crack of the wall, every stone block, every current of air moving through underground wind corridors designed thousands of years before. He was the echo in the curved hallway, a tone that sounded only when you stepped forward with a soul that had grown still. No one knows who truly built Hermopolis. No one remembers the precise blueprint. Because the blueprint was never drawn on paper, it was encoded in vibration. Only those who could listen with their soul could decode it. And when they did not become masters. They became transmitters, a being who lives like a breathing me, a mobile eye of the divine, a resonance walking the world silent yet awakening. From Hermopolis, the city with no lights where each stone hummed with the frequency of Thoth's star, a final doctrine began to unfold. The soul is not an abstract, indefinite thing. It vibrates, it has a rhythm, and like all things with rhythm, it can be measured. Thoth called it the law of resonance, not a law handed down by gods, not a judgment of right or wrong, but a natural principle. The soul moves toward the light only when it can harmonize with the primordial melody. If it is out of tune, it is not punished. It is returned to learn how to adjust. Reincarnation is not a sentence. It is the journey of recalibration. From this, the symbol of Maat emerged, the feather laid upon a scale opposite the heart of the dead. But this was merely a metaphor for a law far deeper. The lightness of the soul does not come from morality, but from attunement. When the soul drifts from the root tone of the ME, it becomes heavy dissonant, pulled downward. When it vibrates in harmony, it becomes invisible light, as the first thought of the upper realms drifting through layers of time without resistance. Thoth, who transcended form, who dissolved into vibration, became the keeper of the scale, not to punish, not to decide who is worthy, but to preserve the resonance of the entire cosmos, the eternal symphony behind all existence. People called him Judge. But Thoth never passed judgment. He only listened. He listened to the echo of the soul crossing death, listened to whether it was offbeat, too loud, too silent, and if it matched, he did not open the way. The way opened itself. It is resonance itself that carries the soul across millions of spatial layers into the borderless light where the ME is no longer an inscription but a heartbeat. If the soul is out of tune, it is not condemned. It is placed back into time where the lesson will repeat, where the body will return, where the chance will reappear. But memory will be veiled. Not as punishment, but so the soul may learn to vibrate without remembering. Because one who can only resonate by remembering has not truly attuned. Only when the soul vibrates correctly, even in darkness, that is true resonance. And that is the only gate that leads back to the source. There is no shortcut, no privilege. No one will open the door for you except the rhythm of your own breath when it becomes one with the pulse of the universe. Thoth does not attend funerals. But in the moment the heart is weighed, many have heard a deep, silent tone, a chill through the body, a stillness that halts the breath. That is the echo of the ME. It is the instant the universe asks, should this soul return to eternal resonance? The scale does not tilt for belief, does not waver for prayer. It responds only to authentic frequency. Thoth guards it, not like a warden, but like a tuner who will not allow the cosmic symphony to fall out of harmony because of a single wrong note. And you, the one reading these words, may feel something within you has gone silent for a moment. That is because you've just touched the true frequency of a question you've carried across lifetimes. Am I in tune yet? When the Greeks arrived in Kemet, they did not merely see pyramids, temples, and unreadable hieroglyphs. They felt something deeper, a silent vibration living within stone, echoing through dreams, weaving its way through corridors without words. And within that space, they began to hear the name Thoth, the scribe of the gods, the one who stood between life and death, the bearer of light and wisdom who wore no crown. But the Greeks did not stop there. They gave a new name to that presence, Hermes Trismegistus, Hermes thrice great, a name encoded with 3 realms, heaven, earth, and the underworld. But they did not know or had forgotten that they were not venerating a man. They were touching a memory older than the Nile, deeper than the Greek tongue, more persistent than the eternity they dreamed of. It was the memory of Enki, the ancient god of Sumer, who shaped Lulu from clay and frequency, who was cast out of history and dissolved into the sands of Kemet. They thought they were discovering a philosopher, but they were stumbling through the blurred margins of divine memory. The Hermetica, now considered the foundation of Western mysticism, was not a new creation, not an awakening. It was a faded copy of a buried original. A remembrance stirred by the ME, a remix of the frequencies once resonating through pyramids, once etched into stone by the invisible hand of a god who had stepped beyond time. The Greeks transcribed commented taught, but they did not realize every notion of as above, so below, every principle of reflection between heavens and earth was not a philosophy, but a frequency. A cosmic resonance encoded long ago in Eridu, where Enki used water and sound to inscribe wordless lines upon the earth. Hermes Trismegistus, in textual form, was a door cracking open a small portion of forgotten memory. But those who opened the door did not know where they were stepping. They passed through a blurred threshold, bringing logic, but unable to hear the music playing softly beneath the concepts. Because Enki, beneath the robe of Thoth, beneath the shadow of Hermes, never wrote to be read. He wrote to be felt. Each symbol was a point of resonance. Each concept just a path leading back to the soul's original rhythm. The Greeks said Hermes was the messenger of the gods. They were not wrong, but they did not know that the message was not words. The message was the vibration itself, the resonance of a god who once seeded life, once birthed a being that could question who was erased from history, but never from truth. And that is why, even today, people still read the Hermetica. Not for its content, but because a part of them feels as if they are reading something they already knew. It cannot be explained, it cannot be proven, only recognized. When reading something in the heart skips a beat, and in that moment Enki is present, not in form, not in name, but in the frequency of memory just awakened. And then one day Thoth stopped appearing. There was no farewell ceremony, no tombstone, no lightning, no gate opening in the night sky. He did not leave, he simply dissolved. Like mist returning to the void, like the final drumbeat fading in a song no one remembers who began. He vanished from sight, but never left the resonance. The foundational frequency of Kemet, the silent rhythm he once wove through thousands of symbols etched into stone, still hums softly in the heart of pyramids, in corridors left unsolved, and in the hearts of those who feel irresistibly drawn to something they cannot name. He no longer stands there. But when the crescent moon strikes just the right edge of the pyramid, its silver light seems to slice through space and time, and a whisper stirs in the soul of someone lost in the modern world. Not everyone hears it. Only those who once resonated with that frequency, even if just once in some far-off lifetime. When a child looks at hieroglyphs for the first time and blurts, "I've seen this before," Thoth is speaking, not with sound but with memory being activated. When a scholar suddenly weeps mid-translation, not because of the meaning, but because one line of symbols causes his heart to pound as though someone had just called his name from inside, Thoth is present. He does not return to bestow knowledge because knowledge was never lost. He simply waits for the right moment when a human becomes still enough to hear what has always been within them. The frequency he left behind does not reside only in pyramids, but in the vibrational structure of ancestral memory. A message not encoded in words but in rhythm, not meant to be passed down, only awakened. And that is what is happening everywhere. People who have never studied Enki, never read of Thoth, never believed in reincarnation or the ME, suddenly being awakened by a symbol, a dream, a sensation of knowing something no one ever taught them. No one owns this. No one created it, because this is a layer of remembrance, not of intellect but of soul. Thoth does not need to return, because he never left. Every time you stand before an ancient stone and your heart grows quiet, every time you gaze at the sky and feel as though something unnamed is gazing back, every time you sense that truth lies not in what is said, but in the silence between the words, you are hearing Thoth. not through your ears, but through the deepest resonance of your soul. He does not require temples. He does not need worshippers, only a soul that remembers how to vibrate. And if you have ever felt that you knew something no one taught you, if you have ever stood before a symbol and found tears falling for no reason, if you have ever dreamed of stone corridors no one has ever described, then maybe you have heard him, in some lifetime, in some form, in some moment you cannot name but can never forget, because true memory needs no explanation. It only needs to be struck again once more. You are standing before a fragment of frequency reactivated an echo from a memory buried in the sands of time, where the name Thoth is not a character but a living vibration, a pulse that once breathed through the Great Pyramids, that once whispered in the dreams of those who no longer remember why they tremble at the sight of a symbol etched in stone. If you have ever dreamed of stone corridors with no doors, if you have ever felt that moonlight was not just light but a wordless language calling you home to a place the mind cannot name, then perhaps you are not learning something new. You are reopening what was once a part of you. Ancient memory never disappears. It only sleeps in the heartbeat of souls vibrating on the wrong frequency. And only when you pause, only when you become still, only when you stop trying to understand will you hear it resonate, gently but deeply. And if something within you just trembled at the mention of Enki or stirred at the sight of a symbol you've never studied yet somehow recognize, if a part of you feels this is not the first time you've heard these things but the first time you're remembering them, then leave comment number 8, not to prove, not to perform, but to send a silent signal to yourself that you are hearing a part of your soul once more. And if you wish to go further, not with your feet, but with your frequency, if you wish to continue tracing the echoes still reverberating from the memory of Enki from the waveforms Thoth once planted in stone and sand, then subscribe to the channel, not to watch more videos, but to make sure you don't miss the next whisper from a place you once knew, from a dream you have yet to name, from a frequency that is waiting for you to remember yourself.